Helping me today with the subject of integrity is my brother David. And David is a professor at Tyndale Seminary and University. He's also pastored for even more years than I have. David, really glad you're here today. And thanks for bailing me out on what is a very challenging, thought-provoking subject, but something that's so critical because integrity is being flashed in front of us every day in the news, in the church. And you and I have talked about it many times. I thought it's better we talk together. I know you, you know me, we're brothers. We always want to pretend to stand up for the other person, and it's easy to gloss over our mistakes, isn't it? But today we need to come clean. We need to talk about this subject. When you think of integrity, what goes through your mind?
Well, when I think of integrity, what has struck me more often than not is the lack of integrity. And we see that because of the headlines that are happening in our political world, but also in our church world as well. And many people who have been significant leaders have really lacked this integrity. But when I think about integrity, there are three words that come to mind. The first one is, you are someone who is trustworthy, you are someone who is reliable, and you are someone who is absolutely honest in what you do. And I think that as leaders, this is something which needs to be held up more so than ever before, because with social media and everything, be sure of this, your faults are going to be found out because people can look anywhere and everywhere.
So when you say all that, it seems like a bar that it draws me in and say, I want to be that kind of person. How do we attain to it? How do we get there? Because we're all broken people. We all have chapters in our lives that we regret. And I think most people are cringing this, thinking, well, what in my past is going to get spilled out now? So where do we go with all of this?
I think it's important. I came across the title of a book written by Eric Geiger called How to Ruin Your Life. And he talks about the way a building can be demolished. And he said there is an external way. For example, you could take a wrecking ball and it just goes against the building and you see it falling down piece by piece. But then he said there is also the way you can place explosions in different strategic places of the building and let them off, and slowly the building will implode. And to me, it seems that there are a lot of people, they're not using the wrecking ball approach, but they're using the internal implosion. And I think when we lose our integrity, when we're less than being honest and forthright and truthful about who we are, even admitting our mistakes, it's one little explosion after another that sets off, and eventually our life will crumble. And I think that's what happens when we lack integrity.
What do you say to people who come to the end of themselves? You know, maybe their stories become public, and that's not always the case, but social media just seems to enlarge all of that today. Think of people you know who have they've made a big mistake, and maybe they were living the lie, but they came to the point where they lived to regret it. How do you rebuild? What do you say to people in that situation? Give us a word of hope.
You know, I recently had a conversation with a fellow colleague who had worked for one of these major organizations where the leader was found out to be less than a person of integrity, and it's had devastating effects across the globe. And one of the things he said to me has kind of stayed with me a little bit. He said, if this individual had only admitted, this is what I have done, I think there would have been a far greater acceptance, not saying approval of what they had done, but a far greater acceptance of the fact that their frailties, that their humanity was looming large, that there is sin in all of us. But then we can begin to look at how we can restore one another. You know, it's interesting, in Galatians 6:1, it says, if you catch a brother or sister in a sin, restore them gently. And so there needs to be a gentleness, because when people are found out, it's almost like everybody wants to jump on them. And I think as the church, we can learn to help restore people. What I see more often than not is we don't restore, we write them off. We want to be rid of them, put them under the carpet. Somehow we just don't want to be associated with that. But when I look at my own heart, maybe I've never been found out with some public things such as some other leaders have. But I know that there are areas of my own life that are not right, and I've had to be restored and renewed. And I want to find a graceful community that can do that. So to do that, I need to be held accountable for what's going on in my life. I need to also learn to regularly conduct what I would call a self-audit. In other words, be honest with myself. What am I really like? And if I make a mistake, then just come clean and admit it and say, well, this is what I've done, and I need to apologize. I need to try to make amends. I need to try to recover and build trust. Because to me, integrity and the building of trust are like a hand in a glove. They go together. And if you lose trust, that is so hard to rebuild, but it takes a period of time to rebuild it.
Just talk to me for a few moments about the whole issue that many times where our conscience will speak to us about something, we put it away, and it's not until there's a major blowout. I like the idea of the self-audit every day. What are some of the things that you would suggest that we should think about to make sure that we're not on the slippery slope of compromise?
Well, I think on a regular basis, we need to look at what are the values that I hold to be true and dear in my life. And let those values be a guiding principle that will direct my life in terms of what I am going to try to do. The second thing is this. I think I need to hold myself to high moral standards. You know, the culture can say, everybody does it. It's not such a big deal. We can say, it's just a little white lie. I mean, you were talking about Ananias and Sapphira. They were saying, this is probably not a big deal. You know, we're giving, but we're just not giving what we said we were giving. And, you know, it's cover up. And we want to often look good. And so here's the question. Does my public and private persona match up? So my public persona is how I can present myself to everybody. My private persona is the person I really am when no one's around. And so is there a consistency or is there something different? And I always remember, I heard this said about Billy Graham by one of his sons. The man you see on TV is the same man we see at home. And I thought, that is amazing. His public and private persona are one and the same. And then I would say another one would be, I need to learn to live consistently. What am I doing with my life and how am I living my life? And is it a consistent manner? And then the last thing I think that's really important in integrity is this, that I follow through in my commitments. So if I say I'm going to be committed, I need to follow through on that. You know, if I make a commitment to one of my kids and say, I'm going to be there no matter what, and something comes up, am I going to say, well, they'll understand and I'll make it up to them? No, I think I have to follow through on those commitments. They are seeing it and learning it from me as a model in their own life.
Hey, Dave, thanks for sharing those thoughts. Lots for me to ponder, lots for our viewers to ponder. And as always, hey, I'm so glad you're my brother. Love you. And we'll catch up with you soon. Bye for now.
Bye-bye.